the second topic for today, where we're going to talk about some other leadership perspectives. We will mainly be focusing on the upper echelon and leadership of the nonprofits. And the aim is mainly to try to differentiate between the micro and upper echelon leadership, and to also describe the domain and the role of strategic leaders. We will also identify particular characteristics of strategic leader and consider the role of culture as well. We'll also explain how top-level managers affect their organizations, what's their impact to the organization, and also analyze the unique challenges of leadership in nonprofit organizations. So, as usually, the question that we usually use to start our topic. So, do you think that there is a difference between leaders at different levels of the organization and in different organizations? So, besides the size and number of people who report to you, is leadership, I'm sure all of you have had, let's say, an experience either as in a middle management position, so you had to deal with top management as well. Besides the size and number of people who report to you, do you consider that leadership is fundamentally different at top and lower levels or in different organizations?
Yes, I believe so. For example, let's say like the good example is just like, let's say the manager or the top level in the warehouse, maybe they have to just consider for the manpower or the shifts or something that is very related to the operative tasks. While if we talk about the sales, the purchasing department or something like that, you have to consider more about the strategic. So the different or the model is totally different because let's say like in the sales, they're focusing more on the number or the income or whatever, while the manager in the warehouse, they don't have to care about the numbers much, but they have to care about the people and operative stuff. This is what I think.
Okay, yeah. Anyone else? Any other opinion? Okay, so this is something that we will try to explain. Thank you, Kataron. We'll try to explain throughout the lecture. We all know when we talk about leadership that we usually refer to people who are at the top of the organizations, like the CEO. When we talk about municipality, the city mayor, schools, for example, school principal, rector of the universities. So considering the amount of attention that we pay to or we give to these top executives, and what we can understand based on this attention and then based on this importance that we give to these people, that we usually believe that these top leaders of the organizations are important. When we talk about the impact of these top leaders on the organizations, organizational elements, in particular, performance of the organization, culture of the organization, structure of the organization. This is what research has mainly focused to try to find a connection between top leaders and these important aspects or elements of the organizations. However, what we need to first, let's say, explain is the difference when we talk about the upper echelon and the mid-level management, the micro and the macro strategic leadership of the organizations, and to consider the differences that do exist between these two leaderships that do exist within the organization. So leadership in many organizations, especially nowadays, I think has become highly centralized. So we see that there is, let's say, considerable power which is concentrated in the hands of the top level or the upper echelon leaders of this organization. That's why it's important that we do understand not only the characteristics of this top leadership, but also the impact that they do have on the organization. And usually we refer to them as the strategic leaders of the organizations, because we know that with their decisions with the power that they have within the organizations, they are the ones that can shape the organization. We mentioned earlier Steve Jobs, Schultz from Starbucks. So when we talk about strategic leadership, we talk about the ability of these leaders to consider and anticipate external and internal events, to maintain flexibility and long-term perspective in order to guide the organizations. And it's the research that shows that CEOs impact and direction and in the direction that the organization does take, the strategy of the organization, the performance of the organization is important and is evident. So CEO style can impact the performance of the organizations directly or indirectly through employee attitude, or it can affect also the adoption of different strategies. CEOs can also play an important role in corruption within the organization, the abuse of power, especially when we have to deal with a narcissist CEO. So all these show that the importance of these top leaders to organizational performance is crucial. So when we talk about the difference between micro and macro, or the micro leadership and the upper echelon, or the strategic leadership of the organization, we can see the difference if we, let's say, if we pose mainly 4 questions, and those are related to who the leader is, what is the scope of the responsibility, where is the primary focus, and what are the effectiveness criteria. So when we talk about the micro leadership, the leader is the one person who has the group, the team, or the department. So you have the marketing department, the head of the department is the leader. You have a team, for example, the one that leads the team is the leader. When we talk about the upper echelon, and we usually refer to the person that heads the whole organization. And we have variety of titles. Either we have the president, CEO, we have COO, we also have TMT, the top management team, governance body, or the board of directors. And when we talk about the scope of responsibility, when we talk about microgroups, we know that the scope of responsibility is usually a small group, team, or the department. Head of department, for example, head of marketing department, his responsibility is only this particular department and the employees involved. Whereas when we talk about this upper echelon of strategic leadership, is the entire organization. With regards to the primary focus, a microgroup is mainly internal compared to the upper echelon. Actually, they will have to focus both on internal and as well as external factors and stakeholders. With regards to the effectiveness criteria on how we evaluate whether these 2 levels of the management are effective, micro group leadership, usually we use productivity, the quality of the work, employee satisfaction and motivation, turnover, as well as absenteeism, to evaluate their effectiveness. However, when we talk about the upper echelon or strategic leadership of the organization, we use elements like stock prices and other financial measures to measure their performance, overall performance of the organization, as well as the stakeholder performance of these organizations. So when we talk about the domain of strategic leadership, there have been identified 6 strategic forces that strategic leadership mainly has to deal when we talk about the organization. The first one, as you can see, is culture, which is mainly, we have discussed it in the previous lecture. We said that it's a common set of beliefs and assumptions that all members of the organizations do share. Then we have the organizational or corporate culture, corporate structure, which comprises of the basic elements or basic design dimensions of the organizations that help us to organize the human resources of this organization. So we have discussed it. We talk about centralization, formalization, integration, as well as the span of control within the organization. Strategic leadership is also in charge of the strategy of the organization. So they address how the organization will get where they want to go. So how they want to achieve their goals. So it's the strategy that is defined mainly by this upper echelon leadership. Technology is also one of their domains, which includes the process by which inputs are transformed into outputs. Environment as well. Here we talk not only about the, let's say, the internal forces, but also the external forces that you usually study during the course of when you talk about the international business environment. Mainly, these are all embodied within the PDL analysis that we usually do, and based on this analysis, they usually do take decision on how to cope with the effects or that, let's say, these external forces can have to the organizations in order to minimize the negative effects that they can have to the performance of the organization. Leadership also is another domain of the strategic leadership of the organization, and it includes managers as well as supervisors at all levels of the organization. When we talk about the strategic leadership of the organizations, they are usually set to have two important roles within the organization. And the first one, as you can see, is strategy formulation, and the second one is strategy implementation. So they do not only formulate the strategies, but they have to implement the strategies. And then based on this strategy formulation and implementation, we have the final performance or of the overall performance of the organization. It's actually here that the leaders will have to carefully watch or follow the performance, because then based on the performance, they can further formulate different strategies if the performance is not bad, and then implement a different strategy in order to achieve the desired performance. However, when we talk about the power of these leaders, as you can see here, it's important to consider the moderating factors that do affect strategy formulation and strategy implementation. And in one of these, let's say, one of the main moderating factors are the external environmental factors as well as the internal environmental factors. So when we talk about external environmental factors like environment uncertainty, the type of industry that they operate, market growth, as well as legal constraints. When we talk about internal organizational factors, like stability of the organization, the size and structure of the organization, the culture that exists within the organization, at which stage of organizational development is the organization is. Also things like presence of power, power, as well as makeup of the top management team of the organization. When we talk about the upper echelon leaders, there are particular characteristics that these people are set to share. In particular, when we talk about demographic and personality traits, so usually older CEOs, they are generally more risk averse, and insider CEOs attempt to maintain the status quo, and therefore these are, let's say, the less likely to change the organization. That's why sometimes externally bringing in an external CEO is crucial for the organization to undergo changes. What researchers also considered is the impact of the upper management's functional background on the organization's strategic choices, and the body of research mainly explored that various personality characteristics, mainly with a focus on the impact of charismatic and transformational leadership, emotional intelligence, as well as the impact of negative traits we have discussed earlier, the dark triad that can have on the performance of the organizations. So there are two common themes that usually do run through the research about individual characteristics of these strategic leaders. And those are related to, first of all, the degree to which they seek challenge within the organization, as well as their need for control. So when we talk about the research that has been done on, let's say, on the on the openness to change of the upper echelon, this has been considered to be an important factor for strategic leadership. So their openness to change and innovation, futuristic, risk-taking, transformational and charismatic leadership, and narcissism. These are all part of these, let's say, this aspect of challenge seeking. So they have to be future-oriented individuals. Challenge seeking executives, especially nowadays during the crisis, we have the Virgin's Airline CEO, Richard Branson. So he's known as a person who is willing to take risk, and this has been the key to his success and his fame, for example. And the second theme that we said was the need for control. So this mainly refers to the fact, or to the aspects how willing the leader is to give up control. We saw the case of Andreas that we had earlier. So she was willing to show, she was empowering the employees. She was giving key projects to them to work on. She was requesting their input. So this shows actually how willing the leader is to give up control. And the degree of need for control is mainly, we can mainly see that in the extent of delegation, as well as the follower participation in decision-making and implementation strategy within the organization. Also, the degree of centralization and formalization shows how, let's say, shows the degree of need of control within the organization. Usually centralized organizations, the decision-making is situated normally, or is focused at the top of the organizations. Also, issues like the degree of focus on process and interpersonal orientation, tolerance for and use as the degree of focus on process and interpersonal orientation, also tolerance for and encouragement of participation and openness. These are also used as criteria to judge the degree of need for control in a particular organization. And usually those leaders that are said to have high need for control, they usually do create an organization that is mainly centralized, there is low delegation, and they do focus less on process. So there is low focus on process. Usually in this kind of organization, we have an extremely tight culture, and focus will be on uniformity as well as conformity within the organization. On the other side, when we have leaders that have low need for control, they do decentralize their organization. So they delegate decision-making responsibilities to the rest of the team. These kind of leaders do also encourage open, adaptable culture, and they mainly focus on the integration of different ideas rather than conformity to one particular idea. So it's the culture within the organization that will encourage employee involvement, as well as they will encourage tolerance for diversity, as well as thought and styles within the organization. And based on these two main aspects, challenge seeking and the desire of control, we can identify four main types of leadership, of strategic leadership within the organization. So these two themes that we discussed earlier, which was challenge seeking and the need for control, they do affect the decision making of the leaders as well as their managerial styles and the way they are going to manage the different forces within the organization. The first thing is these top leaders, they must understand and interpret the environment of the organization. And because they are the primary decision maker within the organization, they will need to select the strategy for the organization. And the last thing is that the leader plays a crucial role in the process of implementation, as we saw it earlier in that figure that we had, as well as in choosing the right strategy through the creation as well as encouragement of particular culture and structure, as well as the selection of leaders and managers throughout the organization. So based on this, there are 4 strategic leadership types that do emerge mainly from these 2 main dimensions. And the first strategic type is the high control innovator, which you can see here. So the desire for control is high, but also the challenge seeking is also high. So these are challenge seeking leader who maintains tight control of the organization. So they would like to maintain tight control over the organizational functioning, and these people do see opportunities in the environment, and they are willing to use technological advancement to achieve their goals. And the different type of strategic leadership, as opposed to this type of leadership, we have the status quo guardian. They have a high desire for control, however, low challenge seeking. So they do not seek challenge. However, the same like the HCI, which is the high control innovator, they want to maintain control. And usually these kind of leaders need the control over the internal functioning of the organization. And these people are usually considered to be risk-averse individual. Then we have the participative innovator, as you can see here. So they have low desire for control, however, they have high challenge seeking. So this is something, this is the opposite of the SQG that we discussed here. As we saw, the SQG mainly values control and low risk strategies, and here we have the opposite. So they have low control, but they have high risk strategies. So they seek challenge and innovation on the outside, and they do create more open, more participative culture and structure within the organization. And usually an organization that mainly suits this kind of leaders is usually open and decentralized organization with many of the decisions that are usually made at the lowest possible level of the organizations, because the leader's low need for control mainly allows the task of decision-making delegation to the lower levels of the lowest levels of the organization. And the last type of the strategic leader is the process manager. And there is low challenge seeking as well as low desire for control. So they do have this process manager. They have the internal elements of the PI leader, as well as the external elements of the SQG leadership. So mainly they prefer conservative strategies that mainly stick to the something that they have already tried and tested. So they are not willing to try something new. So they mainly will shy away from risky innovation or something that has not been tried before. However, they have low need for control, which is likely to engender diversity and openness within the organization. So these are the 4 types of strategic leadership based on those 2 dimensions, which was the desire for control as well as the how much they seek challenges within the organization, which lead to these 4 types of strategic leadership: high control innovator, status quo guardian, participative innovator, as well as process manager within the organization. As we said earlier, culture plays an important role when we talk about these 2 levels of leadership together with the gender. So given this, as we discussed it even in the previous lecture, that we had these cross-cultural differences, in particular with regards to not only upper echelon of strategic leadership, but to group leadership style or micro leadership style, as well as the importance and impact of culture on different leadership behavior. We would usually expect that strategic leadership is something that differs across cultures, because there are cultural values in particular, that we can say can influence the decision as well as the style of this top manager. However, there has been a little research that has been done to connect the different effect of culture of the executive style. So usually, as the organizations do become more global, as they move internationally, their strategic leaders are also increasingly global. And this is a factor that, in a way, leads to cross-cultural differences as well. Also, if you remember when we talked about global research, what this research shows or suggests is that patterns of leadership mainly differ from one country or region to another region. So usually their CLT, if you remember, the culturally endorsed leadership theories, they show that although most of the cultures do value leaders who have a vision and are inspirational leaders, however, it's mainly Europeans that do this to a greater extent than Middle Easterners, for example. So this shows that still there are differences when it comes to strategic leadership of the organization. Also, with regards to gender, there is little research on the role of gender, especially to top management. However, as we all know, we have fewer women, and we discussed this earlier when we talked about I think it was in the second lecture. We have fewer women in executive leadership positions around the organization. One important aspect that we said we're going to discuss is how executives usually do affect their organization. And as you can see in this particular figure that we have here, they are the chief decision makers within the organization, and they are the ones that will need, or the people in charge, to provide general guidelines for the implementation of the strategies. So this is how top executives do influence their organization in different ways. The first one is direct decisions. So leaders are the ones responsible to take decisions. So decisions with regards to different and various aspects of the organization, they will shape the course of their organization. They are in charge of allocating the resources and control over the, let's say, of the different reward systems that do exist within the organization. And this is considered to be one of the most powerful effects of top managers of their organization, usually through the allocation of resources and the control that they have, let's say, over the reward system. And it's usually a top executive is the final decision maker when it comes to the allocation of the resources to different departments or different individuals. Also, they are in charge of the selection of the norms and modeling within the organization. So by rewarding particular behaviors and decisions, by punishing different other behaviors that are not desirable, so they do set these norms and modeling within the organization. Also, their accountability, the promotions that they can do within the organizations, they can also affect, let's say, all these processes. And in turn, by affecting all these processes within the organization, direct decision making, the allocation of resources and reward system, selection of other leaders within the organization, who is going to lead the team, department, promotions, different, let's say, different role modeling issues. So in this way, by setting these norms and modeling, they do in return affect the environment of the organization. And these are some of the 6 elements that we mentioned earlier, or the domain of that constitute the domain of strategic leadership. So environment, strategy, structure of the organization, culture, technology, as well as leadership of the organization. So direct decisions, as I said earlier, vision, mission, they define the strategy and structure of the organization, organizational culture, as well as the selection of other leaders. So these are decisions that usually top management does make. Decisions regarding funding and budget are taken by by top management, allocation of resources to support goals, salaries and bonuses, they decide this. Recognition, like an informal reward system, is something that is decided by the top management, as well as who is going to be promoted, who is not going to be promoted. So the promotion of other leaders and managers within the organization. As I said, they do set the norms and role modeling. So they are the one that set decision criteria, how decisions will be taken within the organization, and rules by which others within the organizations will make decisions are set by the top management. So by simply rewarding certain types of behavior that I mentioned earlier, they can take an active or subtle role modeling of the wanted and desired behaviors and styles that they would like to see within their organizations. So when we talk about strategic leadership, besides let's say besides how they affect let's say how they impact their organization, we have to know that they have particular responsibilities within the organization, and that's usually related to the fact that they are connected to these main processes within the organization that we mentioned earlier. So that's why they are responsible for the organizational performance, in charge of internal health, as well as organizational culture. They also are the ones that will need to provide accountability, not to those internal to the organizations, but also to external constituents or all stakeholders of the organizations, including investors, customers, and the likes. And also one of their responsibilities is ethical behavior and role modeling within the organization. So we all usually are curious to know how much, let's say, these executives, top CEOs do earn. Usually it's dependent on the size of the company as well as the industry that they are based. For example, here, the CEO of Novartis, which is a pharma company, is the most paid CEO in Switzerland. So that does not mean that all CEOs get the same salary. So it depends mainly the size of the company. Usually the larger the company, the higher the compensation. So being a CEO of a small company, a CEO of a large company, you definitely do not get the same compensation. It's usually the responsibilities that you have that will mainly determine the salary that you are going to receive. Also, their power and discretion within the organization. The more power that he has as a CEO, the higher will be their package. Also, how international the company is. The moment that you increase internationally, you will receive a higher executive pay. The moment you are based only locally in particular country, usually you will have much less salary. Also, high stress and instability is something that determines the executive compensation. And usually we know that CEO jobs are considered to have high stress. That's why they require high compensations as well. As we said earlier, one particular focus that we will mainly talk about at the end of the lecture for today is the focus on the non-profit organization and their leadership. So when we talk about non-profit organizations, we know that we talk about private organizations that cannot make a profit for their owner or members. However, they can charge fee if you would like to receive services or membership. So, for example, if you would like to be a member of particular non-profit organizations, you have to pay member fee in certain cases. So that's something that they can do. However, they do not make any profit for their owners. We have other term which is used to describe these NGOs or non-profit organizations, like agencies that are private, with non-for-profit organizations, philanthropic organizations. Usually we mainly refer to them as NGOs or non-governmental organizations. And these organizations do share particular characteristics that we can use to identify whether this is an organization is profit or non-profit organization, and these are mainly related to their tax status usually. However, there are some important characteristics like they operate without profit, although they charge for services or membership, and they, in certain cases, many, we know some well-known organizations do generate and use lots of money. However, these funds are reinvested to support the operations of the organizations. However, many of these non-profit organizations are highly profitable. However, all excess funds are not used for the owners or for personal purposes. However, they are reinvested again to achieve the mission of the organization. These organizations do also have a public service mission, and this main mission is to serve the public good or whatever agenda they have. For example, whether it's going to be healthcare, in the education, churches, community improvement, or might have like foundations that do have a broad purposes. Usually these organizations are also governed or led by a voluntary board of directors, compared to business organizations that usually have a paid board of directors. These governing boards of nonprofits are usually staffed by volunteers with a stake or interest in the mission of the organization. So they voluntarily do govern the organization. And these organizations are mainly funded through contributions or donations. So although, as we said earlier, charging fee for particular services or membership is something that is an important source of revenue for this organization. However, their primary source of funding are mainly contributions, grants, and donations, not only from individuals, but I also receive funds from government agencies and other foundations as well. So we know many organizations around the world that do operate or that are known as non-governmental organizations. So I'm sure you can mention any of them, like the International Red Cross. We have WWF, which is the World Wildlife Fund. So these are, let's say, some of them well-known, although there exist lots of them that we have. So when we talk about the role of the leaders in for-profit and non-profit organization, even their role is different, which you can see from this figure that we have here. So the leaders in the organization, they are mainly in the middle. So on one side we have the donors, as we said, because that's mainly where they issue the funding. So individual donors, members, foundations, government grants. And on the other side, we have the recipients, or those that benefit from their cause, like individuals, members, different communities, or even other organizations. So, however, the role that we said earlier, the strategy formulation and strategy implementation, that's something that leadership in nonprofit organizations also share. So mainly what is different is they do not have the profit motive. So in these cases, this let's say guides them compared to for-profit organizations. So profit is mainly something that guides business organization as well as the rewarding of their leaders. That's why the role of leaders in nonprofit organization is that of the intermediary, as I said earlier. So they are in the middle. So it's the leader that guides the organization to allocate the resources like donations or grants to the various receivers that, let's say, turning the resources that are trusted to the organizations into social good that the recipients, either individuals, members, communities, or other organizations can benefit in these cases. And based on this intermediary role that they play, one of the major challenges that these leaders usually do face is related to recruitment, to retention and motivation of their employees, because many of them are volunteers. There is no, how to say, these financial incentives are not there. So mainly they have to deal with volunteers without having access to substantially monetary rewards in these cases. And even if you are a paid employee for an NGO, the salaries are usually lower compared to other business organizations. And based on a recent study that has been done, nonprofit organizations are mainly facing leadership crisis because of significant shortfall of qualified leaders that can lead these nonprofit organizations. So these are some of the main challenges that leaderships in for-profit organizations do face. So they must rely on participatory leadership to build consensus. So there should be a participative decision making. There are, because it's non-profit, you are responsible to your say donors, those that contribute. There are strong ethical requirements in these cases. As I said earlier, they have particular challenges to motivate and retain employees that usually do not receive, either they are volunteers or they receive, let's say, less money. And one of the main challenges, especially nowadays, is they face lots of difficulties in finding or recruiting new leaders for the organization. And the research shows that leadership, there is, as I said earlier, there is a leadership crisis because of this shortfall of qualified leaders in the nonprofit industry. So we are back to the question that we posed initially. So at some level, so whether you are leading upper echelon group leadership, leading is leading. So you as an individual, whether you lead a team, whether you lead a large organization, you will need to take care of the tasks that are there and take care of the people that are under your leadership. That's why it's with regards to this, there is no difference. However, leading at higher levels of the organization, we would all agree that requires different skills, which is, let's say, heavier reliance on cognitive and interpersonal skills and the ability to juggle many, let's say, complex factors, especially when we talk about strategic level. On the other side, we saw with the nonprofits organizations that they do face different challenges compared to for-profit organizations. And that's mainly related to their fact that they mainly work with volunteers and they have little access to typical rewards for their employees, which are mainly financial. However, regardless of the type of the organization level, something that these different leaderships at different levels of organizations that share is the connection that they will need to have to their followers. And this is at the heart of leadership, no matter whether it's micro or upper echelon leadership. That's something that each leader at each level will have to take care. So they have to connect with the people that they are leading. Also, competence and knowledge of the task or the business matter. Since these are, there is no compromise in these particular issues at any level. So whether you will need to have the competency to do your job. However, as we have discussed it in the past, situation or context plays an important role. Each leadership situation is unique, and we have discussed it earlier. Each situation will require that you as leader have the preparation, you as leader have the knowledge, you as a leader do have also the experience and styles and behaviors that will fit that particular situation that you can manage at your best. So that's all with regards to this lecture. Do we have any other question? Okay, we have no question. Just a second. So let's go with this scenario as we are used to discuss. So you are fully aware that change is not your thing. You are highly successful at creating systems and putting effective structures in place. You like order and predictability, and you have a track record to show how good you are at your job. So you join the leadership team of a small company that is also highly successful, but that operates very loosely. Everything is decentralized and the focus is on change and innovation. So how can you contribute as an individual? So what do you do to succeed in this case? Just a short hint, this is actually related to those 4 strategic leadership types that we discussed earlier. So what would you do in this case? So in this case, what kind of what kind of strategic leadership type is this individual, based on your opinion? Is he a challenge seeker or not?
Yes.
Remember, he says that he is successful at creating systems and putting effective structure. They like order and predictability and have track record.
Oh.
This shows that actually it's more like a status quo guardian that we discussed earlier, or process managers, that usually these are challenge averse leaders. They would like to maintain tight control and they do not like to delegate, let's say to try new things. So they would like to keep, let's say, things more structured in these cases. And how you can characterize in these cases the organization that these people are working in. So they join the leadership of a team of a small company that is highly successful, but they operate very loosely. So everything is decentralized and the focus is in change and innovation. So in your opinion, is there a desire for control in this organization or not?
No.
No. Yeah, absolutely. So we are talking about an individual who is not a challenge seeker. So as we said, he's like either a status quo guardian or more of a process manager. However, he joins an organization whose leadership is innovative. So either high control innovator or participative innovator. So what we can see in these cases, but there may still be let's say, lack of fit with other managers in this organization, or the general style of the leadership of this organization that is known for high challenge seeking or high desire for control and low desire for control. However, we know that organizations need all types of leadership they would like to run smoothly and effectively. That's why this complementary style that he's having will allow the organization and members to address different challenges that they may face in these cases. So, for example, although the status quo guardian, the SQG manager, may not be the most innovative one, however, they can still help the organization a lot to run efficiently, because they like order, predictability. They have track record to show how good they are at their job. So they like things to be highly structured. So this is a way they can help the organization. That's why it's important that organizations are aware of the strengths and weaknesses that these individuals have, and then they can work with them to contribute to the organization.